grew up in a small, quiet village in rural China, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. Life was simple, and everyone knew everyone else. But one night changed everything, and the memory of it still sends chills down my spine. It was the eve of the Qingming festival, a time when we honor our ancestors by visiting their graves and making offerings. My family had just returned from the cemetery, and we were preparing for bed when we heard a strange noise outside. It was a rhythmic thumping sound, like someone repeatedly hitting the ground with a heavy object. "Stay inside," my father whispered, his face pale. "Lock the doors and windows." I could see fear in his eyes, a fear I had never seen before. My mother quickly ushered my younger siblings into the bedroom, and I followed, heart pounding. My father grabbed a talisman from the altar and placed it on the door. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Jiangshi," he replied grimly. "Hopping vampires." The tales of the Jiangshi were something we heard as children, stories to scare us into behaving. These undead creatures were said to hop because their stiff bodies couldn't walk. They drained the life force from the living, leaving their victims as lifeless husks. I thought it was just a myth until that night. We huddled together in the bedroom, listening to the eerie thumping that seemed to be getting closer. Suddenly, there was a loud bang on the door, followed by another and another. The door rattled on its hinges, and I could hear the distinct guttural groans of the Jiangshi outside. "Don't open the door," my father warned. "No matter what you hear." The banging grew more intense, and then it stopped. The silence was deafening. We waited, barely breathing, until we heard a blood-curdling scream from outside. It was our neighbor, Mrs. Lee. Her scream was cut short, and the thumping resumed, moving away from our house. "We need to get to the temple," my father said. "It's the only place that might be safe." We gathered what we could, and my father led us out the back door, keeping to the shadows. The village was eerily quiet, save for the occasional thump of a Jiangshi in the distance. We moved quickly but cautiously towards the temple at the edge of the village. As we approached the temple, we saw more villagers, their faces etched with fear, huddling together. The temple doors were open, and the priest was chanting, holding a talisman-covered staff. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense. Inside, the temple was filled with the sounds of whispered prayers and sobbing children. We joined the others, and my father explained to the priest what had happened. "The Jiangshi have awoken," the priest said solemnly. "We must hold them off until dawn." He handed out talismans to everyone and instructed us to place them on the doors and windows. We did as we were told, our hands shaking. The night seemed to stretch on forever, and the thumping outside grew more frequent and closer. Suddenly, there was a loud crash, and the front door of the temple splintered. The Jiangshu had found us. The priest raised his staff, chanting louder, and the talismans glowed faintly. But it wasn't enough to stop the Jiangshi. They began to hop towards us, their pale, lifeless eyes fixed on their prey. "Stay behind me," my father shouted, holding a burning stick of incense like a weapon. The Jiangshi's movements were slow, but relentless. One by one, they pushed through the broken door, their rotten, stiff limbs jerking with each hop. The priest continued to chant, sweat pouring down his face. The villagers tried to fend off the Jiangshi with whatever they could find, but it was futile. The creatures seemed unstoppable. In the chaos, I saw my younger brother Wei standing frozen in fear as a Jiangshi lunged towards him. Without thinking, I grabbed a talisman and slapped it onto the Jiangshi's forehead. It shrieked and recoiled, giving me enough time to pull Wei to safety. "We need to hold them off until dawn," the priest repeated, his voice hoarse. "Their power wanes with the first light." But dawn felt like an eternity away. We barricaded ourselves in the inner sanctum of the temple, the Jiangshi pounding on the doors. My father's grip on his makeshift weapon tightened, his knuckles white. "Stay strong," he urged us. "We will survive this." Hours passed, each minute feeling like a lifetime. The temple's walls shook with the force of the Jiangshi's assault. Just when I thought we couldn't hold out any longer, a faint light appeared in the sky. The first rays of dawn broke through the darkness, casting a soft glow over the temple. The pounding stopped. The Jiangshi let out a collective hiss and began to retreat, their movements sluggish and weakened. We watched in silence as they disappeared into the shadows, defeated by the light of day. Exhausted and shaken, we emerged from the temple. The village was in ruins, but we had survived. The priest approached us, his face lined with relief and sorrow. "The Jiangshi are bound to the night," he said, "but they will return. We must always be vigilant." That night changed our lives forever. The village rebuilt, but the fear lingered. Every Qingming festival, we remember the terror of the Jiangshi and the lives lost. And we never forget to place talismans on our doors and windows, for the legends of the Jiangshi are all too real. As I stand before my family's altar, I pray that we never have to face such horrors again. But deep down, I know that the Jiangshi will always be out there, waiting for the darkness to return.